So next step is translocation. So what was the scenario? So you had this kind of a scene. This is the messenger RNA. You have an tRNA here. This is amino acid tRNA. This is amino acid number 2. And you have initiator tRNA. This is amino acid number 1. All right. What happens next is that a peptide bond is formed. So peptide bond formation is accompanied by change in interaction of tRNAs with respect to the large subunit. Now this peptide bond has been formed. Okay, so we have seen in detail how peptide bond is formed, and this is now the peptidyl tRNA. This is the peptidyl tRNA, and this is the deacylated tRNA. And their interaction with the large subunit changes while their interaction with the small subunit remain the same. So what has happened? Now this peptidyl tRNA occupies the P side in large subunit while retaining its place at A site in the small subunit. This deacylated tRNA, which is now without amino acid, okay, this deacylated tRNA now occupies the E site on the large subunit while retaining its place at P site in the small subunit, right? So this is peptide bond formation. We have seen that peptide bond formation is catalyzed by an enzyme called peptidyl transferase. Okay, and what is the characteristic feature of this peptidyl transferase? This peptidyl transferase is also an RNA enzyme. 23S ribosomal RNA of the large subunit, participates in this particular activity. So the next step is translocation. And it is catalyzed by a factor called elongation factor G. This is also called as a translocase or a translocation factor, EFG, elongation factor G. Okay, it is also called as a translocase or a translocation factor. This step also requires GTP. So GTP will be hydrolyzed to GDP. So three movements take place. This is what I told you, I think I remember in the last lecture also. Three movements take place during translocation. One, the interaction of peptidyl tRNA moves from A site to P site in SSU. It is already there at the P site in the LSU, but in the small subunit, it will move from A site to P site. Similarly, the deacylated tRNA it moves from P site to E site in SSU. It's already there in the E site in the LSU. The lower half, which was there at the P site, it shifts to the E site, exit site. It was the lower half was there at the P site, so it moves to E site. All right. And the third movement is ribosome moves one codon forward. So ribosome will move one codon. So the next codon will now be occupying the ribosome will move in this direction. So the next codon, this is the next codon, it will get into the A side. So let us see these three movements. I will make a picture and then you will be able to understand. So you have this is the ribosome, this is messenger RNA. So you have now peptidyl tRNA occupying P site, deacylated tRNA occupying E site, and ribosome has moved one step forward. So the new codon is now at the A site. This is A site. The question that comes in mind is why the movement of peptidyl tRNA takes place from A site to P site in two steps. In first step, its interaction in the large subunit changes. It moves from A site to P site in the large subunit, and in the subsequent step, it moves from A site to P site in the small subunit. So in two steps, the entire tRNA shifts from A site here to the P site. The entire tRNA, the deacylated tRNA, it also moves in two steps. In the first step, only the interaction in the large subunit changes, it comes into the E site, and in the subsequent step, now its interaction in the small subunit also changes. It shifts from P site to E site shown over here, right? The question is, why do you require this movement to take place in two steps? And the answer is, one of the challenges is before the ribosome is that to retain this peptidyl tRNA in the ribosome, do not allow it to drift away. Okay, so if it just moves in one step, there is always a possibility that this ribosome, this tRNA, which is carrying the peptidyl chain, now you are seeing only two amino acids, but at different stages of synthesis, it may carry peptidyl chain comprising of more than 10, 15, 20, 25, 50, 55 amino acids also. So the important thing is, and the challenge is to retain that peptidyl tRNA within the ribosome until what? Until what time? Until this polypeptide synthesis is completed. Okay. And suppose if it shifts in one step from A site to P site, it shifts in only one step, then there is always a possibility that this peptidyl tRNA, this tRNA carrying the polypeptide chain in different stages of synthesis may just drift away. It may just leave the ribosome, leading to what? Leading to synthesis of truncated proteins, which will not have any biological significance. So to avoid this kind of a situation, what nature has done, it keeps one end of the tRNA anchored while shifting the other end. So when the end of the tRNA in the large subunit was shifted, the part of the tRNA in the small subunit was firmly anchored in the small subunit. Okay. And when the small subunit, the part of the tRNA in the small subunit was shifted, we had the other end, the upper end in the large subunit firmly anchored over there. Okay. So I hope you are getting what I'm saying. So that is why, this shifting takes place in two steps. In one step, the interaction in the large subunit changes. The portion of the tRNA in the large subunit changes its position from A site to P site in case of peptidyl tRNA, firmly anchoring the lower end at the A site. Okay, and in the subsequent step, when the upper end has been firmly anchored in the large subunit, the lower end in the small subunit, it is moved, it moves from A site to the P site. So in two steps, the complete tRNA comes at the P site. And now this is called as peptidyl tRNA, this is called as deacylated tRNA, and the A site now occupies A site as a new codon. So this completes one cycle. This is one cycle of protein synthesis. So now what will happen? Amino acid tRNA, who will bring the amino acid tRNA? It will be brought in by EFTU. EFTU will brought in a new amino acid tRNA at the A site. Okay. And what determines which amino acid tRNA will be brought in? It will be determined by the codon. Let's say the codon is for glycine. EFTU will do what? EFTU will bring in a glycinyl tRNA glycine. It will be brought in here, right? And the next step would be a peptide bond formation, means you will have, let me draw it for you. So then you will have a peptidyl tRNA here. You have a deacylated tRNA here. And the new codon is for glycine. So a new amino acid tRNA bringing glycine has been brought in by whom? By elongation factor TU. The next will be peptide bond formation. So in peptide bond formation, what is going to happen? So you will have AA3, AA2, AA1. This will become deacylated tRNA OH. You also have a deacylated tRNA at the E side, OH, right? So now the chain has been elongated by one amino acid. Okay, and as soon as peptide bond is formed, what happens? The interaction of the tRNAs in the large subunit changes. So this will be occupying, let me draw it for you so that you can understand it. Interaction in the large subunit changes while the other end is firmly anchored at the small subunit. So you have AA3, AA2, AA1. You have OH and you have another tRNA here, right? So interaction in the large subunit changes, and the next will be translocation. So in translocation, three movements take place as we discussed in the last slide. So there will be a new codon at the A side. Peptidyl tRNA will be occupying the P side. AA3, AA2, AA1. Okay, there will be a new deacylated tRNA here at the E side, and the earlier tRNA, deacylated tRNA, has been moved out of the ribosome. Okay, so new codon is now occupying the A side. Amino acid tRNA will bring the new amino acid tRNA will be brought in over here, depending upon what codon it is. Let's say if this codon is phenylalanine, then EFTU will bring in a phenylalanine amino acid tRNA phenylalanine over here. A peptide bond will be formed. So this cycles is repeated, and after every cycle, the chain is elongated by one amino acid. Okay, and this continues till at the A side it encounters one of the stop codons. So the next step is termination. So termination, there are three termination codons. Three termination codons, and what are they? They are UAA, UAG, and UGA. These are the three termination codons. Okay, so when the A side, on the A side, any of these three codons are there at the A side, then there is no corresponding amino acid tRNA. There is no corresponding amino acid tRNA for these three codons. Okay, so when at the A side you have either of these three, then there is no corresponding amino acid tRNA. There is no corresponding amino acid tRNA. Corresponding amino acid tRNA is not there. Rather, these codons are recognized by what are called as release factors. These codons are recognized by release factors. There are two types of release factors. There are two release factors. They are called as RF1 and release factor 2. RF stands for release factor. So release factor 1 and release factor 2. Release factor 1 recognizes codon UAA and UAG, whereas release factor 2 recognizes codon UAA and UGA. Okay, so you got the point. When at the A side, during the chain elongation process, at the A side, if there is, it is occupied by any of these three codons, UAA, UAG, and UGA, then there is no corresponding amino acid tRNA. Okay, so to recognize them. So at that time, these codons are rather recognized by these protein factors. They are called as release factors, RF1 and RF2. RF1 is capable of recognizing UAA and UAG, whereas RF2 is capable of recognizing UAA and UGA. Okay, so what happens next? Once these release factors, they bind to, release factor binds to the termination codon. Any one of these three termination codon, what does it do? At the A site, you can write down at the A site of ribosome, it activates peptidyl transferase. The same peptidyl transferase which was involved in peptide bond formation. The activity of peptidyl transferase, is stimulated, but its specificity is altered. Peptidyl transferase is activated with an altered specificity. Altered specificity. This is an important point. Binding of release factor to the termination codon, any one of those three termination codon, and depending upon what termination codon is there at the side, the corresponding release factor will be binding it. So now you know RF1 can bind to UAA or UAG, and RF2 can bind to UAA or UGA. So once it binds, what does it do? It switches on the peptidyl transfer. It activates the peptidyl transferase activity with an altered specificity. Okay, 16S ribosomal RNA. 16S ribosomal RNA also participate in this. And you know where this 16S ribosomal RNA resides or located? This 16S ribosomal RNA is a part of small subunit of the ribosome. Okay, so you know ribosome, small subunit and large subunit, they are made up of polypeptide chain and RNAs. So 16S ribosomal RNA is a part of small subunit. So it also participates in this. It also participates in this, right? In this activity. Because what was found out, if there is a deletion in 16S ribosomal RNA, you replace a few nucleotides of this 16S ribosomal RNA. In that particular case, the transcription, the translation doesn't get properly terminated, even if at the A side you have any of these three codons. So it signifies, this particular phenomenon signifies the role of 16S ribosomal RNA in the termination of translation process. Okay, so what happens? This peptidyl transferase with the altered specificity, what does it do? It cleaves the ester bond between the polypeptide chain, cleaves the ester bond between the polypeptide chain and tRNA. So the ester bond is broken. Three things are happening. Polypeptide chain is freed. Polypeptide chain, or whatever you can call it as protein also. That protein chain is freed. It moves out of the ribosome. mRNA leaves the complex, leaves the ribosome, followed by tRNA. These three will leave the ribosome one by one, and the 2 units of the ribosome, they will get into the dynamic equilibrium. That means they will be associating and they will be dissociating continuously. So it happens like this, it goes like this. So you have the ribosome. You have this messenger RNA. This is stop codon. Any of the 3 codons. UAA, UAG, or UGA, right? And then at the P side, you have this peptidyl tRNA. So this peptidyl tRNA is like this. You have the polypeptide chain synthesized, okay? And at the E side, you have this deacylated tRNA. So when such a situation comes, this is peptidyl tRNA now carrying a polypeptide chain of, you can say, n number of amino acids, 90 amino acid, 100 amino acid, 150 amino acid, whatever. So this chain elongation will not continue because at the A side now it has encountered one of these 3 codons, stop codons, right? And as a result of that, there is no corresponding, there is no complementary tRNA. So amino acid tRNA cannot be brought in. So rather, these are recognized by the release factor. The release factor will come and bind here. So this is the release factor. Depending upon what codon is, either RF1 will come and bind or RF2 will come and bind. So what next? It activates the peptidyl transferase. Peptidyl transferase. Okay, with the altered specificity. 16S ribosomal RNA also participate in this. So as a result of that, what happens? The tRNA, mRNA will leave, the tRNA will leave the complex plus the polypeptide chain. This is polypeptide chain. Right? And these 2 subunit will also get into dynamic equilibrium. So we started from this place and we have come back, returned to this particular place. So what does this peptidyl transferase do? This peptidyl transferase cleaves this bond. This bond is broken by the peptidyl transferase. So let me make it for you. So this is the kind of bond you have. This is Rn. This is the last peptide bond. This is the last peptide bond, and then you have rest of the polypeptide chain here like this. Okay, so this bond is broken. This bond is broken. This bond is hydrolyzed by the peptidyl transferase with an altered specificity. This is the tRNA, right? So this will become, once it is broken, so this will become C double bond COH. So this will be the C terminus of the polypeptide chain. So polypeptide chain N terminus we started from, and the last amino acid will have the carboxyl group free. So it will become the C terminus of the amino acid. Okay. So once polypeptide chain leaves, it will be followed by the liberation of tRNA and the messenger RNA. All of them will leave, and the two subunits of the ribosome, they will get into the dynamic equilibrium. So this completes the protein biosynthesis. This is how protein biosynthesis is completed. All right. I sent you material for what happens in case of eukaryotic ribosome. So you have to go through that material that I sent you, and also I sent another picture of, there are antibiotics, because since it is a important process, it becomes a soft target for various types of antibiotics also. So we have a class of antibiotics, which inhibit different stages of protein biosynthesis. For example, streptomycin, which is a class of aminoglycosides. There are others also. What do? They inhibit the initiation and cause misreading of the messenger RNA in case of prokaryotes. So what you have to remember? You have to remember streptomycin and other aminoglycosides, they inhibit the initiation process of the protein biosynthesis. We have another kind of antibiotic called tetracyclines. What do? They bind to 30S subunit and inhibit binding of amino acid tRNAs in case of chain elongation. So once you have complete ribosome formed, okay, they bind to 30S subunit, but what do? They don't allow amino acid tRNAs to come and bind at the A site. Third category of antibiotic is called as chloramphenicol. What do? They inhibit the peptidyl transferase activity. So you know what is this peptidyl transferase activity? Peptidyl transferase activity is required for peptide bond formation. So they inhibit this peptidyl transferase activity, and as a result of that, chain elongation will not take place. You have another kind of antibiotic called cycloheximide. Please remember, it inhibits peptidyl transferase activity in 60S ribosome, eukaryotic ribosome. 50S is present in prokaryotes, in bacteria. Large subunit in bacteria is 50S, whereas large subunit in higher organism, eukaryotic organism, is 60S. So cycloheximide, it inhibits the peptidyl transferase activity of 60S ribosomal subunit. You have erythromycin, another class of antibiotic which is very commonly prescribed in upper respiratory tract infections. Erythromycin. What does it do? It binds to 50S subunit and inhibits translocation. So we have just seen what is meant by translocation. After the peptide bond formation, three movements take place. The peptidyl tRNA moves from P side to E side. The deacylated tRNA moves out of the ribosome, and ribosome moves 3 codons forward. That means a new codon. Nikhil, please mute yourself. So a new codon now occupies the A side, right? So that translocation process, which is sponsored by EFG, is inhibited by erythromycin. And puromycin, it is a amino acid tRNA analog. It looks like amino acid tRNA. So what does it do? In place of amino acid tRNA, because of the structural similarity, it occupies where amino acid tRNA should have been occupying. And as a result of that, it leads to premature chain termination. Okay. Please remember, puromycin is a amino acid tRNA analog. So amino acid tRNA, occupies the A side. When puromycin is there, in place of amino acid tRNA, sometimes because of structural similarity, puromycin can occupy that position, and as a result of that, no further elongation of the chain can take place. So you have to remember this also.